On this Thursday night, an ambassador walks back contentious comments but keeps his job.
Making a change would not help release those Canadians a day sooner.
How much damage did John McCallum do? At Issue is here to break it all down.
Standing in support of an illegal coup is shameful and unacceptable.
How the turmoil in Venezuela is churning Canadian politics. Can the NDP find a unified message?
It's a made-up value.
And does the Windchill factor really help measure how cold it is? The hottest debate of the winter. This is The National. But we begin tonight with a breaking story from Kingston, Ontario. RCMP and local police have raided multiple residences and have made arrests in what's being called a national security investigation. We've been digging for details, and some are emerging. Let's bring in our national affairs editor, Chris Hall. And Chris, what do we know to this point?
Well, Ian, the investigation is still ongoing, and there was a briefing call tonight with senior public officials about what the next steps will be. We do know this. 2 people are under arrest. One of them is a minor. There were raids on a number of homes, as you noted in the introduction. Police say the situation is contained, that there is no imminent threat to Canadians, and the threat level for the country remains unchanged at medium. And tonight, Public Safety Minister Ralph Goodale put out this statement. He said, Canadians can be confident that whenever credible information is obtained about a potential threat, the RCMP, CSIS, and other police and security agencies take the appropriate steps to ensure the security of this country and the safety of its citizens. Now, as for this particular investigation, Canadian officials tell us it has been going on for months. It's led by the RCMP in conjunction with Kingston Police and the FBI, that there was aerial surveillance by an RCMP plane. And we know that because it was flying so low and it was so loud that neighbors began to complain. And one of them took a photo of it that captured on its radar the call letters in the back of the plane that indicated it was an RCMP plane being used in this investigation.
So important to note, as you pointed out, no imminent threat, says the government. But what happens next here?
Well, there's going to be a news conference tomorrow in Kingston about midday where we will, I assume, learn who has been charged, the exact nature of the investigation, what threat or what concerns there were. We also know the RCMP is planning to put out another release in the morning. But as it stands right now, we are still trying to work out just what exactly the nature of this investigation is and what was the concern that led to these arrests tonight.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Our national affairs editor, Chris Hall, in Ottawa. And, of course, we'll be following this story through the night, live here on The National.
Canada's ambassador to China took back remarks he made earlier this week about Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou's extradition case. Comments that's caused a stir in Ottawa, in Washington, and in Beijing. John McCallum has now apologized, and as Katie Simpson explains, the Prime Minister said he has no plans to fire McCallum, despite calls for him to do just that.
And as I said, I think Ms. Meng has quite a strong case.
Over 40 minutes on Tuesday, Canada's ambassador to China repeatedly advocated for Meng Wanzhou's release. Now he's trying to walk back those comments, saying it was all a mistake. In a statement, John McCallum wrote, "I regret that my comments with respect to the legal proceedings of Ms. Meng have created confusion. I misspoke. These comments do not accurately represent my position on this issue." McCallum's earlier comments to the media undermined the Prime Minister, who for weeks has said there will be no political interference in Meng's case. Still, Justin Trudeau is standing by his embattled ambassador.
Our focus is entirely on getting those Canadians home safe and making sure that all their rights are respected. And I don't see, and making a change would not help release those Canadians a day sooner.
Meng's arrest in December at the request of the U.S. has triggered a severe backlash from China. 2 Canadians have been detained and a third ordered executed over drug charges. While the government tries to ease those tensions, calls are getting louder for Trudeau to replace McCallum.
But what I think might happen and should happen is that the government looks to its bullpen, it looks to the next ambassador, and that maybe there is an early transfer in the late spring or the summer.
The political fallout so far is quite harsh, but this extradition expert says from a legal standpoint, it doesn't look like the U.S. case against Meng has been tainted.
I think it's simply, as I said at the beginning, a commonsensical view of the facts as we know them to date, and that it's a very weak extradition case. But of course that has to be tested in the court.
Canada is now waiting for U.S. authorities to file the proper paperwork ahead of Meng's next court appearance in February. Rosie.
All right, Katie, are we getting a sense at this point about whether the Americans are upset or angry about John McCallum's comments?
After McCallum's comments really started picking up traction, a senior source tells me that the Canadian Embassy in Washington urgently started reaching out to senior American officials to try to reassure the Trump administration that Canada's official position had not changed, emphasizing that Canada is a rule of law country and that there will be no political interference in this case. So far, there are no explicit complaints from the Americans to report. Rosie.
All right, Katie Simpson tracking this story yet again tonight here in Ottawa. Thank you.
Thanks.
And we have new details today on the case of a Canadian sentenced to death just last week in China on drug smuggling charges. Robert Schellenberg's lawyer told CBC News he will appeal that sentence this coming Sunday, one day before time runs out. His lawyer says Schellenberg has remained calm since receiving the verdict, and he was able to meet Canadian consular officials 2 days ago. The appeal, though, could take months. So what can the government do to help these Canadians in China? What can we read into McCallum's mixed messages? Chantal, Andrew, and our own Eric Grenier all here for At Issue. That's a bit later in the show. Let's turn now to the U.S., though, where the only certainty on day 34 of the government shutdown standoff is that it will go into a 35th day, even as Donald Trump seemed to signal a possible compromise on that key sticking point, funding for the Mexico border wall.
Well, one of the ideas suggested is they open it, they pay a sort of a prorated down payment for the wall, which I think people will agree that you need.
Nancy Pelosi called it unreasonable. So the U.S. Senate voted on two competing bills to reopen the government, one Democratic, one Republican. Both of them, though, defeated. And as Keith Boak tells us, concerns are mounting that getting a deal to fly could be a matter of life and death.
After 34 days, air safety is a main talking point.
What do we want it? Now!
In the government shutdown.
No one will get out of this unscathed if we do not stop this shutdown.
The president of the Flight Attendants Association is warning something tragic could happen if the government isn't soon returned to its fully upright position.
Leader McConnell, you can fix this today.
Choice is absolutely clear.
Several polls have found Americans overwhelmingly blame Mitch McConnell's Senate Republicans
See what happens.
And President Trump for the shutdown. With flight attendants, pilots, air traffic controllers, and airport security people all warning that the shutdown endangers the public, the Trump administration hasn't helped itself by sounding deaf to the other realities of ordinary lives.
Am I out of touch? I don't think I'm out of touch. I'm addressing the problem. I mean, I've met with my individual staff members. And God bless them, they're working for free. They're volunteering.
Mr. Secretary, there are reports that there are some federal workers who are going to homeless shelters to get food.
Well, I know they are, and I don't really quite understand why. There's no real reason why they shouldn't be able to get a loan against it.
All that had the top Democrat in the House referencing Marie Antoinette.
I don't know, is this the let them eat cake kind of attitude, or call your father for money? Or...
Mr. Boozman.
The Senate defeated two bills to reopen the government this afternoon, but the president said he'd expected that.
I have other alternatives if I have to, and I'll use those alternatives if I have to.
CNN is reporting tonight that the White House has already drafted a proclamation declaring a national emergency at the U.S. southern border and a plan to bypass Congress and divert $7 billion from various government budgets to build a wall. Tomorrow, the already record-long shutdown will set a new record. Keith Boak, CBC News, Washington.
So while paralysis continues in Washington there, Andrew, it seems there's a new kind of stalemate as well tonight in Venezuela.
Yeah, Rosie, but it's hard to know which way it'll tip. It's been a day since tens of thousands of people took to the streets and an opposition leader declared himself president, but Nicolas Maduro remains in charge. Military commanders seem firmly behind him, and his rival, the man who would be president, Juan Guaido, he's off the radar, apparently fearing arrest. Now, the rest of the world, including Canada, has chosen sides in the standoff. We're going to explain which sides and why. But first, we turn to Paul Hunter, who takes us inside a country divided, uncertain, and uneasy.
The remnants of yesterday's mega anti-government demonstrations in Caracas, burnt vehicles, shattered storefronts, and ever-lingering fury and frustration. The country is waking up sad today, said this man. Most Venezuelans say Maduro is illegitimate. Nicolas Maduro remains the president today, at least in his eyes. But for countless Venezuelans who deem his election last year rigged, who blame him for the country's extreme economic misery, the key moment in yesterday's protests when opposition leader Juan Guaido declared himself acting president, quickly recognized by Canada, the US, and others, but significantly not by Venezuela's powerful military. On Venezuelan TV today, multiple pledges of support for Maduro, said Defense Minister Pedrino Lopez. We are here to avoid confrontation. This as tensions with the U.S. grow. Venezuela today closed all of its diplomatic offices in the U.S., and the White House has made clear today, labeling him profoundly corrupt, it wants Maduro gone. The question is how.
We have our eye very closely on Venezuela, very closely.
Donald Trump hasn't ruled out military action, but for now the focus is economic pressure, including diverting money for Venezuelan oil away from Maduro and into the hands of Guaido, if that's possible.
We think, consistent with our recognition of Juan Guaido as the constitutional interim president of Venezuela, that those revenues should go to the legitimate government.
Meanwhile, those protests yesterday underlined the real fear in Caracas tonight, that all of this may soon only get worse. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
Now, many countries have picked their side in the Venezuelan crisis. Russia, Turkey, Syria, China. They all continue to back Nicolas Maduro. Mexico's government does as well for the time being, according to its statement. On the other side, Canada, the U.S., and several countries throughout Latin America openly support Juan Guaido. The European Union is more cautious, not backing Guaido explicitly, but instead saying they support the country's National Assembly and democratic forces in the country. Now, Canada's declaration of support for Guaido was swift, unequivocal, and contentious, because some are wondering, why him? What claim does he really have? Evan Dyer explores how that decision was made.
Canada says Guaido has more legitimacy than the government represented in this embassy because he's the most senior elected official in the country that can trace his mandate back to a more or less free election, the selection of the National Assembly in 2015. That vote produced a large opposition majority. The opposition found its victory at the polls was short-lived.
The Maduro government wasn't willing to live with an opposition-controlled legislature. A Supreme Court packed with Maduro's supporters stripped the assembly of its powers. Ben Rosewell was Canada's ambassador in Caracas at the time.
Venezuela has not had a constitutional order since about July of 2017, when the President Maduro suspended the existing constitution by creating another body and giving them absolute powers.
Maduro had another problem to fix. His own term as president was ending.
So he essentially directed his own re-election in 2018. And the Venezuelan people just didn't buy it. They didn't even show up in the polls. There was something like 20% turnout because it was just so obviously a farce to the people of Venezuela.
The Constitution says that if the presidency is vacant, the president of the National Assembly takes over till new elections. That is Juan Guaido. And that takes us back to Canada, where Guaido is presenting a problem for the NDP.
This guy who shows up in the middle of a square and says, I'm now the president of Venezuela, I mean, this is absurd and it's offensive. And I'm absolutely confident that it's just one more in a long litany of attempts by the United States to run the show. They've got some of the biggest oil reserves in the world in Venezuela. Is that part of what's going on? You bet it is.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh sent out a non-committal message that didn't address the issue of whom Canada should recognize. But MPs and candidates were already going rogue, tweeting out messages of hands off Venezuela. By day's end, the party clarified it considers Maduro a thug, but would have continued to recognize him. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
Now, for all those countries taking sides, lots aren't. And they say, just look at the record of foreign support for regime change in that country. It's messy. In the 1950s, Marcos Pérez Jiménez ran a vicious police state, and Washington supported him. But a popular coup sent him packing to Miami and brought democratic government to Venezuela. In the 1990s, the elected government's austerity programs were deeply unpopular. A little-known military officer at the time by the name of Hugo Chavez tried and failed to seize power in 1992. The U.S. opposed that coup.
This military coup attempt is firmly condemned.
A decade later, Chavez was the elected president of Venezuela. He was popular but divisive. Top members of the military staged a coup, but within hours, lower-ranking officers helped restore him to power.
Contra-revolución.
This time around, the U.S. would clearly have preferred that the coup succeed.
The Chavez government provoked this crisis.
But with Chavez then and Maduro now, foreign support for change will likely only go so far. It's what happens inside the country that'll be decisive. And one last note on this. Juan Guaido did speak today from an undisclosed location. For those willing to abandon Maduro, he promised amnesty.
We are live tonight here in the National following a number of developing stories. Officials are trying to figure out what caused a dozen passengers to fall ill after boarding a plane in Quebec City this morning. There were 185 passengers on board the flight bound for Florida. It was still on the ground being de-iced when something went wrong with the ventilation system. 12 people started feeling sick. Some were nauseous and vomiting. Others said their eyes and throats were burning. The plane was evacuated and 10 passengers were sent to hospital. The airline says it is investigating. A manhunt is underway in Montreal following the fatal shooting of a real estate developer linked to the mafia. It happened this morning at a building that's under construction. Police have not identified the victim, but multiple sources have told CBC it was Tony Maggi. He survived numerous attempts on his life before, including a shooting in 2008. No arrests have been made.
And ahead tonight on The National, we will continue our series on sleep with a solution if you're tossing and turning. You'll meet a Canadian writer who very much wants his stories to put you to sleep.
Oh, excellent. First, though, when it comes to the forecast, do you rely on the wind chill to figure out how cold it's going to be? Why, some meteorologists say that's not worth your time. Whatever.
And a terrifying morning for a family in Toronto. They woke up to find their basement apartment was flooding. The water was rising fast.
Split of a second. We didn't know what to do. My daughter, she cried out, there's water in the house. By the time she cried, the water reached here.
Well, your typical January always has plenty of ways to make life miserable, right? But one Toronto family in particular has really been through the ringer after a broken water main effectively turned their home into a sinking ship.
I see my kids' life in front of me, just taken away from me. It's so, I don't know. I'm so traumatized right now.
The Gilberts live in the basement apartment of a West End high-rise, and when their home suddenly flooded overnight, they were lucky to escape because they had no idea it was even happening until Tina Gilbert got up to use the bathroom at 2 in the morning.
It was cold. The water was right here when I woke up.
The adults were able to get to the children's room and wake them up, but not before the water hit waist level, forcing the entire family to wriggle out through a street-level window.
When we arrived, we couldn't even open the door because the water level was so high in the apartment that the pressure was keeping the door closed.
Had crews not quickly cut the power, the family could have been electrocuted.
But thank God for life. Yeah, we're here. Yeah, that's it.
The building superintendent has found the family a temporary unit to stay in, but now they're weighing their options. Now, Torontonians are far from the only ones struggling with miserable weather. Montrealers could barely keep their heads above water today, so to speak. After a winter thaw, dozens of schools were closed while workers tried to clear slushy water. Driving, especially tricky, even for large transit vehicles. And it's all expected to take another punishing turn tomorrow. From a high of 3 degrees today, the temperature is expected to drop to about 17 below with the wind chill, which will turn all of this back into ice, creating more chaos and maybe more school closures. Now, about that wind chill, we all know what it means, right? This idea that whatever the temperature is, the wind can make it feel colder. It's been in place for almost 2 decades, and it's a way to get a better sense of how many extra layers we should be putting on when we go outside. But as Cameron McIntosh explains, some critics say it's inaccurate and misleading.
On a bright and cold winter day when most are happy to be inside, Gurleen Carr is learning to skate in the dead of her first Canadian winter.
How cold are you right now?
It's very cold.
Do you know what the temperature is?
Yeah, minus 27.
Yeah, close, minus 26.
Oh, yeah.
First rule of life in a real winter city, check the forecast.
And as long as you're dressed appropriately, it's great.
Here at the Forks in Winnipeg, Environment Canada's weather station is reading a temperature right now of minus 26. However, it's another number that most people are focused on, minus 33. That's the wind chill, a measure many meteorologists just aren't comfortable with.
Wind chill is not actually measurable. Wind chill is derived from the temperature measurement and the wind measurement, so it's a made-up value.
Wind chill is a complex equation factoring wind speed and temperature, resulting in an estimate of heat loss that often sounds much colder than it actually is. So, contrary to folklore and Randy Bachman, Portage in Maine may feel like 50 below, but has never actually hit minus 50. Meteorologist Scott Keeler is among many calling for a different measure.
I think actually using a time that it takes skin to freeze would make a lot more sense.
From a scientific point of view, it's controversial.
Environment Canada's David Phillips argues it's relatable. There's just something about minus 38.
To me, that will scare the bejeebies out of people. I think we should continue to do that and provide Canadians with a maybe imperfect, but a useful measure so that it allows them to make the right decision.
Take your toes. In Carr's case, that means wearing more clothes than, well, ever.
There you go. Okay.
And focusing on the skating lesson rather than a science lesson. After all, at some point, cold is just cold. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
I don't know where that leaves us. I've been in minus 30 with wind and without wind, and it's different with wind. We need to figure out how to measure that.
Well, cold is just cold. I think he got it right.
Ahead on the National. It turns out, ask and you just might receive how a Halifax man landed on stage with Bryan Adams last night.
Cool. First, though, it's At Issue Night. So Andrew, Chantal, and Eric are all here with their thoughts on John McCallum's mixed messages on China. That's right after the break.
We're live on the National with an update on Northern California's deadly 2017 wildfires. Investigators say an electrical problem in a home was to blame for the Tubbs fire that killed 22 people and charred nearly 15,000 hectares. That is good news for the beleaguered utility Pacific Gas and Electric, which has been linked to 17 other blazes across the state that year and may file for bankruptcy.
I am innocent of any criminality whatsoever.
Scotland's former First Minister Alex Salmond has been charged with multiple sex offences, including attempted rape. The 64-year-old led the Scottish government for 7 years and was a driving force behind Scotland's 2014 bid for independence. Salmond has been under investigation for months following allegations that he inappropriately touched female government staffers.
I think Ms. Mann has quite a strong case. I never expected that we would have this problem thrown at us.
Our focus is entirely on getting those Canadians home safe and making sure that all their rights are respected.
If I were Prime Minister, I would fire John McCallum.
Okay, mixed messages on China. Canada's ambassador makes some bold statements, as you heard there, and then takes them back. So did John McCallum go rogue? And how are these foreign policy issues, these big issues like this feud with China, continuing to make life difficult for the government? At Issue is here to tackle these questions and more. Chantal Hébert is in Montreal. Andrew Coyne is in Ottawa tonight, and Eric Grenier also in Ottawa. Okay, let's start with the John McCallum and the apology. I just want to read viewers a part of it that struck me. Here's what he said in his statement. He says, I misspoke. These comments do not accurately represent my position on this issue. As the government has consistently made clear, there has been no political involvement in this process. Andrew, do you buy that?
Well, it's difficult to believe that it doesn't represent his position. I suppose the question is, does it represent the government's position? There are three possibilities here. One is that he was completely going rogue, taking a position at odds with the government. The second is that he was speaking for the government. This was the message they intended to convey. They now deny that. The third is that this represents something in the government's thinking that they would rather was not discussed publicly, and that is worth, I think, continuing to explore. If the suggestion, leave aside the impugning the integrity of the extradition process and seeming to line up with the arguments of the Chinese government, even as they're holding 3 Canadian hostages. If the suggestion was, and I think it was, that at the end of the day, after the court has ruled, when it comes across the minister's desk, who has final say on the extradition treaty, that there'd be some deal we'd be willing to strike, where we would refuse to extradite her, even though she was otherwise worthy of being extradited, solely to get those hostages back. That seems to me to be doing a deal under the threat. That seems to be paying ransom for hostages, which is something I don't think government should be doing. So I think there are still more questions to be asked here about exactly who he was speaking for here.
Just to be clear, when Andrew's talking about hostages, he's talking about the 2 men that have been detained under charges that we do not know. There's been no due process, and then a third man who has now been sentenced to death in that case for drug trafficking. And Andrew's calling them hostages for political reasons, I would imagine. Chantal, your perspective on all of this.
I tend to believe that McCallum went off message, that he overshot, that he was on a mission to say we have a system where the decks are not stacked against the person that is being asked to be extradited, but that he got carried away and unveiled these cards. The reason I don't buy that he was on a mission to send the message that he's now walking back is that this is the kind of thing that, as an ambassador speaking for the government of Canada, he could have said privately to Chinese authorities. He did not need to go to Markham to call in some Chinese-speaking reporters to, unveil this position. It may reflect something the government of Canada is ready to do, but in any event, the venue does not suggest that that is where it should have happened.
It at very least reflects how difficult the file is, Eric, that you can't, that if you make one misstep on these issues with China, you can be in big trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I look at an issue like this, I tend to see it as I see a lot of different things through the prism of the upcoming election. And when you think about the domestic considerations that might have gone through either McCallum's own decision to do this, go rogue, like Andrew said, is one of the possibilities, or if this was somehow in conjunction with the government or the Liberal Party, for McCallum to invite Chinese language media, both from China and from Canada, and go to Markham, that is a media outlet, and those media outlets have a huge reach across the country. And the Chinese-Canadian community is an important electorate for the Liberals, for the Conservatives. There are 19 ridings across the country where they make up at least 20% of the population, and they're all in the battlegrounds in Vancouver, in Toronto. John McCallum, because he was a former Liberal MP for the Markham area, he has a lot of credibility on this file, and he's not only someone who's speaking for the government, he's someone who would be seen as speaking as a Liberal, not just as some public servant. So I think that consideration has to be taken into account as well, that McCallum might have felt, or the Liberals might have felt, that they might have not been coming off as very sympathetic to Ms. Mung's plight, and that for a lot of voters who, Chinese Canadians, would not have a uniform view on this, that idea of at least sympathy that Ms. Mung was somehow put in the middle of a spat between the United States and China, that maybe someone communicating that the government understood that sympathy, maybe there was some electoral considerations at play.
I don't doubt for a second that McCallum must have run through his meeting with those journalists somewhere. But what does it say? And I'm not terribly fascinated by how the electoral calculations of the Liberals on this, except to note that a week after they lost a candidate to appealing to a specific community, it's a bit rich to then go back to the electoral drawing board and use your ambassador, who is the points person in a major foreign policy dispute, to spread the good word of the Liberal government. But I am interested in the question of what does it say about John McCallum, the ambassador, that he cannot fulfill a mission and not cross the line in a briefing with journalists in Markham.
We pay diplomats to be discreet. I think what's as significant as who was invited to that press conference is who wasn't invited, which is the entire national media. And why exactly, I don't know, but that's another question I think that has to be answered in this affair. Whether or not, what he intended to signal is an interesting question. I think Chantal makes a good case about, maybe he wasn't intending to signal quite as much as he did. But what he unintentionally signaled, I think, is also important. And what it signals about what the government's thinking is significant and worth digging into, but also what unintended signals this might be sending to the Chinese. And what's really worrisome to me in this is when you have these really tense situations where, and I'm not the only one who calls these people hostages, it's the consensus of the foreign policy community that these are essentially, this is hostage diplomacy China is practicing. At such a moment, to be sending such confused signals from the government, advertently or inadvertently, is really troublesome. And if he was given authorization to say this, that's troublesome in one way. And if he did it on his own, that's also troublesome and certainly calls into question whether he should be our ambassador to China.
So even with, the retraction then, is that enough to put things right here? Can he go back to China and continue the work that he was doing to try and get these Canadians released? Eric, you go first there.
Well, I mean, I really can't say if it'll be enough. When you see how the government was reacting first to McCallum's comments, where it was very hard to get a statement out of the Prime Minister when he was asked about it, when we saw him, I believe it was earlier today, not exactly giving McCallum a complete support, suggested the government was still pretty uncomfortable about this. And, to say that he misspoke when he went on, it was a 40-minute session with the media. I mean, it's hard to believe that McCallum himself would have been really the one who really wanted to get out there and make this statement.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember. I mean, my memory is probably not as good as everyone else's, but I can't remember a time when an ambassador has had to do that kind of thing, walk back public comments on an issue that is this delicate with another country. That seems to me pretty incredible.
And if this is the preview, and I don't know, but if this is the preview of the pretext of the arguments that the government would make for the minister nixing the extradition, that, we don't support the sanctions process, for example.
Right, for the justice minister at the end of the extradition process to sign off one way or the other, yep.
But that's the other thing, is the arguments that the ambassador was trotting out here are thin and contentious at best. I think a lot of people would say they don't actually stand up to analysis. They're arguable, but they're not airtight by any means. And if these are the arguments that they're going to make to cover up what it would be a fairly transparent deal, then that doesn't speak well to this government's reasoning or its understanding of the extradition law itself, for example.
It also puts the new justice minister, lucky him, Mr. Lametti, in a more difficult position, because it's going to be awfully hard, whichever way he comes down now, to continue to argue that this is not a political decision, that he's only following the process, and that now that the courts, if that is what is going to happen, have said yes to the U.S. application for extradition, then he can't see a reason not to go ahead with it, or in the reverse, blocking it. These words will continue to hang over whatever happens at the end of that process.
I only have like $1.30 left. Let's see if we can do it. Because China wasn't the only issue. I just want to do one quick go around on the issue of Venezuela. Canada had a pretty clear position with the United States and some other countries around the world today around the self-endorsed leader, but the NDP had a very different view, and it was manifested in a number of ways today. Here's the new NDP candidate, Sven Robinson.
It is shameful that the government of Canada and Justin Trudeau is lining up with Donald Trump, with the authoritarian thug Bolsonaro, the president of Brazil, and is in fact recognizing a coup.
Okay, very quickly. So Jagmeet Singh's position, not exactly as extreme as that, but certainly not what the government's position is. Nikki Ashton, fairly out there as well. Just a quick go-around on what you think of the strategy. Chantal?
I was curious to see that the candidates and MPs now speak before the foreign affairs critic or the leader on a major foreign policy issue. And I do note the distance between the official statement from Singh and those statements we just heard. And to me, that suggests that maybe the position within the caucus that we have heard from Sven Robinson is not as unanimous or as strong as what he expressed.
Andrew?
It may be leadership politics already rearing its head in the NDP ranks. It's also, you've got people on the far left of the NDP who have always been soft on the Chavez regime, now the Maduro regime in Venezuela, which is a dictatorship, which is a kleptocracy, which is rejected by millions of Venezuelans. Look, nobody likes lining up with Donald Trump. What they conveniently fail to mention is 9 or 10 other members of the Organization of American States, the Lima Group, which is a pro-democracy group in South America that we are a part of, that we are trying to support. This isn't lining up with Donald Trump. This is lining up with the pro-democracy forces in that region.
Eric, quickly.
Yeah, not just in the Western Hemisphere, Germany as well, recognizing that new leader. And I think it exposes two things. One, the divides that are still within the NDP between the further left flank and maybe the more centrist flank, and also just the weakness of the leadership and the caucus relationship with that leadership, that they can't get a single message out. And we're not able to really put anybody out in front of a camera who could express the party's actual position on this file.
And then the Singh didn't bother doing it himself either in front of a camera. Okay, thanks everybody. Before we go, be sure to subscribe to @Issue the podcast. Extra content there. This week we're looking ahead to the upcoming session of Parliament, the last one before the election probably. Look for it at iTunes, any major podcast app, our website. Hey, that's the new Parliament in West Block, cbcnews.ca/The National.
Straight ahead on The National, a solution for those sleepless nights. Why this author wants his stories to put you to sleep.
It's relaxing for them, and it's getting them out of their head and out of their anxious thoughts.
I mean, should it be boring?
I don't think it's quite about being boring specifically.
How often do we ponder the depth of the present moment, the one we're in? I mean, how often do we really feel what's happening within and around us?
The velvety tones of Matthew McConaughey, reading in a slow, circular style until ideally you drift off. Just one of the celebrities employed by a California software company to read you to sleep for $80 a year. And in a sleep-deprived age, business is booming. Stress, diet, economic uncertainty, staring at screens, a number of powerful forces conspire to keep us awake at night, and too often they're winning. Tonight, as part of our continuing series on sleep, Nick Purdon meets one of the creative minds who thinks he has a calm and relaxing fix to the problem.
Far in the distance, between the trees and beyond the roofs, there was a narrow glimpse of an absolutely breathtaking mountain.
I love it. I love the tone. I love the softness. Take your time more. Like, you can totally slow it down. This is the whole point, is just to be slow and flowing and rhythmic.
Chris Advinson is working on a brand new story that he hopes will really put people to sleep. That's what he does. Chris is a sleep writer, and he's enlisted actor Pardeep Basi to read his story back to him to see if it works.
Jagged gray draped with powder white, a frontier of earth ascending from the land and disappearing into the fog.
The story is called The Cloud Mountain. Not a lot happens, and that's the point. It's part of a new vein of writing called slow lit, stories that put you under.
The skip of the heart you feel in rare moments when the universe shows a flicker of its fullness. Sierra turned off the ignition, go out of the car and clipped the door shut.
But writing sleep stories isn't easy. It takes work. At this communal workspace in Toronto is where Chris polishes his manuscripts. And I meet him to find out just how a sleep story works.
We all remember being told a bedtime story when we were kids to fall asleep, and that idea is ancient. We picked up on the idea a few years ago to write stories specifically for a grown-up audience. So we kind of think of them as bedtime stories for grown-ups.
What would you say are the keys to a good sleep story?
We avoid anything that's going to jar the attention of the listener and kind of jostle them awake. So it's kind of like, it's a balance. You want to kind of hook the attention of the listener, but I think of it as holding it really gently. And the idea is that the experience is an unwind for them. It's relaxing for them, and it's getting them out of their head and out of their anxious thoughts.
I mean, should it be boring?
I don't think it's quite about being boring specifically. I think it's about not being too exciting.
I mean, what's the goal ultimately of the sleep story?
The goal of the story is to guide the listener to sleep, to really kind of soothe and lull them off to a peaceful sleep.
So is there an ending then? Did they get to the end?
The goal is for the listener to not get to the end, which as a writer of stories is a little strange.
So you put people to sleep for a living?
I put people to sleep for a living, yes. Non-chemically induced sleep. An imaginative journey that is just beautiful and peaceful.
Okay, how about we give it a try? I asked Chris if he were to write a sleep story about himself, how would it go?
I would think about a situation and some kind of simple journey and just have an experience that maybe connects with nature. I think I would set off on a hike to start my own sleep story.
And that is about the level of drama and action in a typical sleep story. And the thing is, Chris started his career as a screenwriter. You know, car chases and explosions.
I certainly didn't set out to write stories to put people to sleep, but have sort of fallen into it, and I adore it.
And he's very good at it, too. Millions of people have downloaded Chris's stories.
After lingering for a long while, Ciara climbed back into her car and continued toward the mountain, hands shuffling and tires.
I get it. By now, I should be asleep. So then how does a sleep story end?
In many of the stories, the end of the resolution of the story is that the character falls asleep.
How does the story you're working on today, how does it end?
You'll have to listen to find out, or maybe you won't never find out. I don't know.
I realize Chris and I don't really have much in common. You know, I want people to get to the end of my stories. In fact, I hope you're still with me. Nick Purdon, CBC News, Toronto.
Our sleep series continues on Monday night. We'll look at how many young Canadians aren't getting enough sleep. Several teenagers shared their stories with us. Take a look.
I had problems with almost falling asleep in class. I'd be listening to like what they read up on the board, and I'd just feel my head dip, and I'd shoot right back up. It was pretty bad.
Like your brain isn't awake to understand everything, and then call on you, and you don't know the answer, and then you kind of just freeze.
Sometimes I don't even go. I will fake sick and I'll stay in bed all day. I don't function properly. I don't do anything in class. I fall asleep. I snap at people. It's not good.
In the meantime, if you missed any of our stories this week, you can find our series on our YouTube page. That's at CBC The National. We'll be right back with tonight's moment.
When Will Guthrow heard Bryan Adams was playing in Halifax, he decided to take a chance. Having learned to play Summer of '69 on the guitar years ago, he brushed up on the chords and put together a Bristol board sign that read, "Bryan, can I play guitar on Summer of '69?" Well, Bryan Adams saw the sign and invited Guthrow up to play. Now, naturally, we wanted to know what that was like, so we caught up with him, Guthrow that is, and that is our moment.
I ran up to the front with the sign, he read it. He said, "Bryan, can I play guitar on Summer of '69? Hell, no, you can't.
Yeah.
The audience will prefer it if I play it." I said, "Okay, then, you know what, this is fun." I got to interact with Bryan Adams, that was amazing. And then at the end of that song, he says, "Now where's my guitar guy with the sign? Get up here." Suddenly I'm on stage shaking Bryan Adams' hand and getting ready to play Summer of '69. I started playing guitar about 15 years ago, and it was one of the early songs that I learned. I was just incredulous. It was just so surreal. I wasn't even thinking. I got on autopilot to remember the chords. It became so comfortable after a few minutes. The band and Bryan were so gracious. They were really amazing. Made sure it was a lot of fun for me up there.
So I've watched Bryan Adams lots of times in concert. He is terrific, and he often does bring somebody up there. I didn't know that what you need is a sign, though, to improve your chances. But let me stop talking because Andrew wants to share a weird anxiety dream
It's not that weird. Look, I was just going to say, all I could think about as I was watching that, because I sometimes have this same sort of fantasy, is that I'm going to get up there, and I know how to play the song, but the performer wants to play it in a different key than I know it. And then what?
Almost as odd as the pillow thing. Anyway.
Musicians would understand. Anyways.
You guys should just keep talking because I'm falling asleep here. It's like one of those sleep stories.
All right.
Nice.
Thank you for sharing. That's the National for January 24th. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.